Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Elisa. Today I am going to give you 7 tips on how to improve your speaking score for the IELTS speaking exam. This really does apply to all 3 of those sections, and I would say that this is specifically for people who want to get a 7 and higher. If you are, at a 5 or something like that, this will definitely help you as well. But I'm really talking to you, those people who want to get a 7 or higher. All right, so my first tip is you have to talk enough. This is a speaking exam, so you need to speak. Don't make the mistake of giving 1 or 2 word answers, even if the examiner is saying things like, okay, what else? What else? Okay, ignore that. I know that sometimes they do that. That is super annoying. You want to make sure that you are talking enough so that they know that you know how to speak English. That's very, very important. So in order for them to do that, they have to hear you speak enough English so that they can judge you fairly. We all want to be judged fairly, so you're gonna have to speak. My rule of thumb for parts 1 and part 3 is that you say at least 5 sentences. About 5 sentences. Maybe you say, 3 or 4 long sentences. That works too, but 5 sentences is really kind of about where you want to be. Now, of course, you can say a little bit more. They will cut you off at some point, but about 5 sentences is what you want to be practicing in your head. If you only say 1 or 2 words, you're going to get a really low score, like a 3. It's not going to be good. Don't make that mistake. If you only say 1 or 2 sentences, probably going to end up with like a 5. So one way to improve your score is really just to talk more. That is a great way to get your score up. All right, so the second tip, I know you guys have heard this one, use idioms. When I talk about idioms, I'm also including phrases and phrasal verbs. You can get a 7 without using idioms. I've seen it. It has been done. I'm not sure if native speakers use idioms as much as they want you to in the exam. We definitely don't. We don't. So you can just speak really great English with no idioms and get a 7. You can absolutely do that, but it's harder. So use idioms, make your life easier. If you have a 7 and you're not using idioms, or if you have a 6.5 and you're not using idioms and you're trying to improve your score, that is definitely a way to do it. I think when you want to get a 7.5 or higher, idioms are practically mandatory. I'm not saying it's impossible to get a 7.5 or higher without idioms, but it's going to be really hard. You're going to have to be absolutely perfect on everything else. Just in case you don't know what an idiom is, it is a phrase. When you say these words individually or you look at this logically, you look at their meaning, it makes no sense. But over time, some crazy Brits or Americans or Aussies or Kiwis, is that what they call people from New Zealand, or Canadians, have said some words and they put them together and they kept saying it, and then other people kept saying it, and it became like a thing. It became a phrase, and even though the words don't make sense together, when you say something that's an idiom, we all know what it means. We're in the know. So you got to show that you're in the know too if you want to get a great score on the IELTS exam. There are hundreds, there might be thousands of idioms out there. You're not going to memorize them all. Don't do that. Do not try to memorize all of the idioms. That is not going to work for you. Just use 15 or 20. Memorize 15 or 20. Use ones that mean things like having fun, that mean things or that refer to spending time with people. If you guys want me to, I'll do a video on some of the best idioms that you can learn for this exam. But you really just want to focus on 15 or 20. Memorize those. Use those. Don't try to memorize every idiom that's out there. It's pointless. You're going to be wasting your time. It's not going to happen. And then you won't be able to easily recall which idioms to use. Definitely watching TV will help you with idioms and phrases. I have a great series of conversation videos that you can see on my channel. They go through different phrases and idioms and show you how they're used in a conversation, so you can do that too. So these are all ways that can definitely help you get in some of those idioms, but you definitely want to use them, and you really want to focus on 15 or 20 that you use in all of your answers. Tip number 3, don't be repetitive. So the examiner is looking at your ability to speak English, and one of the ways you're going to show them that you are an awesome English speaker is you're not going to keep saying the same words and phrases over and over and over and over and over again. You're not going to say, I want, I want, I want, I like, I like, I like, I believe, I believe, I think, I think, I think. That basically just means you have the command of those 2 words. It does not mean you have the command of the English language, and it means you are missing opportunities to get in better vocabulary. So don't do that. If you notice that you keep saying the same phrases and you're starting sentences in the same way, then you have an opportunity to stop doing that. You can go and you can find other ways to say something that means the same thing. I think, I believe, they mean the same thing. So if you're always saying I think, you got to throw in some I believes. You got to throw in some other ways to say that. Maybe don't start every sentence with I. That would be good. Don't start every sentence with I. Find a different way to start the sentence, and that way you'll have sentence variety. You'll do a better job of showing that you actually know how to speak English. So you can say things like I prefer, I tend to, in my opinion, from my perspective. So these are just different ways of saying, the same thing. And then that way the examiner is like, oh, okay, well, they do know English. I'm going to give them a good score. So you want to get them thinking that, you know what you're doing. And that's a really easy way to just kind of mix things up. Tip number 4, use better words. As I just said, you don't want to be repetitive. You want to use synonyms or other ways of saying things. Use better and bigger words. Expand your vocabulary. A great way to expand your vocabulary is to take words that you know and use synonyms and antonyms. Synonyms and antonyms. I can speak. All right, so you want to use synonyms and antonyms. I am currently going through a series with verbs, 500 of the most common verbs. And you might know some of these verbs. You might know all of these verbs. But with that series, I give you synonyms and antonyms, and I talk about some of those a little bit. And so that's a great way for you to go, oh, well, I already know this word, but now she's just given me a synonym. And I can go walk around and I can use that synonym too. So some words have like different degrees, like hate is a common word that's used, but we've got detest and loathe, which just means extra hate. And so when you're going over the synonyms for something, it's a great way for you to replace words, especially words that you keep using over and over and over and over again. It'll help you get variety, and it'll help you boost your vocabulary, both of which you need if you want to get a 7 or higher on the IELTS exam. Using adjectives is another great way to improve your vocabulary. If you want to improve your vocabulary organically, reading is awesome. You can read books, you can read blogs. I think I've already mentioned that I have some conversation videos. That's a great way to improve your vocabulary organically. You can watch TV series. I know a lot of you guys use TV as a way to help improve your English. I'm about to start going over some TV series and picking out some words and phrases from there. You can check out those videos too, and that will help you pull out some natural phrases as well. Tip number 5, describe things. So I already told you that you want to use idioms and you want to use better vocabulary, and a great way to use those is to describe things. So if you're saying, my best friend is so-and-so, describe your best friend. It's an awesome opportunity to use adjectives because they're describing words and you're describing your best friend. So it just kind of makes sense. So these are great places to shove it in. Make sure you're describing things because it also helps you say more. I already told you, you got to talk more. One way you can talk more is to describe things. If you're describing things and you can't say, oh, I don't know what to say, describe stuff. The more detail you give, the more you will have to say. This becomes extremely helpful when you're doing your part 2 questions, because they're kind of all about detail. If they're not about detail, then you have to start talking about all these different things, which I think is harder. I think it's much easier to take one thing and really describe it. You'll see that in my ebook. You'll see that on any of the part 2 questions that I answer on this channel. But that is something that is really helpful in helping you round out a really good answer, especially with part 2, because you definitely have to get in those idioms and that really great vocabulary. The 6th tip is to use structure. So what I mean by structure is I just mean it is easier, in my opinion, to just have a way of doing things. So this is your way of answering part 1 questions. You have a way for answering part 2 questions and a way for answering part 3 questions. This way, when they ask you a question, you can kind of go to your structure. And maybe your structure is, I need to start with a superlative. I need to start by saying, yes, I like this because. Yes, I think that's awesome because. Some sort of a structure so you kind of know where to get in there, so you don't freeze. And then also, if you have a structure when you're somewhere in the middle of your answer, you have a place to go. I said you have to do at least 5 sentences for parts 1 and 3. And I'm saying this because oftentimes people will just give like 2 sentences. And it's like, you got to keep talking. And when you have a structure and you go, okay, I'm going to give a reason now. I'm going to give 3 reasons. That kind of helps you talk more. So having that structure can kind of put you at ease, because you're going to be nervous in the exam. That is normal. But also it gives you things to say and gives you places to go, so you're not going, I don't know what to say. And the examiner is looking at you like this. Anything else? You've got another 30 seconds left for your part 2. You want to say something else? So this way you're not doing that. You're not having that experience because you have the structure, you've practiced with your structure, and you know you're going to be around the right time for part 2, and you know you're going to be saying enough sentences and phrases, because you can fit that into your structure too for parts 1 and 3. You can definitely see a little bit of my structure on the videos that I have on this channel for answering specific questions. And then obviously I go over it in a lot more detail in my ebook, but you can definitely see it from resources that I have. You can make your own structure. You just need to make sure you have a plan. All structure is a plan. And our last tip, tip number 7. This one is so obvious. Ready? Tip number 7 is to practice. Obviously. You're doing tip number 7 because you wouldn't be here if you weren't. Practice, practice, practice. Practice it in the way you want to do it in the exam. So practice it with the amount of vocabulary, perhaps adjectives or idioms or phrases that you want to use. Practice it with the structure. However you practice it is hopefully going to be how you do it. If you practice things and you're kind of all over the place with your practice and your questions aren't kind of coming out in the same way, then that's kind of how the exam is going to go for you. It's going to kind of be, up and down and all around and hit or miss. But if you're practicing things in the same way, if you're using these tips, if you're using structure, I have other videos about other tips, different tips that I give you. I'll put the link in the description below. If you're doing those things and your practice is the same and your practice is consistent, your performance in the exam is going to be consistent too. You're going to be nervous, so it might go down a little bit. That happens. But that's another reason why you have things like structure, and that's another reason why you practice all of these things so that when you're nervous, you can still deliver a great English speaking performance. You can do it. I know you can. So I really recommend that you give yourself 3 to 6 months to practice for the exam. I don't recommend that you sign up for the exam. It's in 2 weeks and you just haven't practiced yet. That's probably not the best thing to do. So 3 to 6 months, and in that 3 to 6 month time, I recommend you spend 1 to 5 days, depending on what's going on in your life, studying for this exam. So if you have 3 months, you're obviously going to need to spend more time. If you have 6 months, you can get away with spending a little bit less time. But you really want to make sure you're putting in that consistent time. There are lots of things that you can do as you're practicing. I have some of that information in another video. It's something like 5 quick tips to improving your IELTS score, and it goes over some of the things that you want to do during your practice time. But you want to make sure that you get it in. All right, so that's it. Those are my 7 tips for improving your IELTS score with the goal of getting a 7. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell because there will be other videos breaking down and answering some IELTS questions to help you guys get a better score. All right, thank you so much for joining me. I will see you later.